Good afternoon and welcome back to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm your host, Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq. Joining me at MarketSite is Brad Levy. He's the Global Head of Loans and CEO of MarketSERV over at IHS Markit. We're going to focus on Fintech, what it means for Main Street and what it means for Wall Street. Brad, thank you very much for joining us at MarketSite. Let's get into this. Why are you seeing such a focus on Fintech now?
Well, thanks, Jill, and thanks for having me. Well, I would say number one is cost. The industry has a cost problem, and Fintech will be part of that solution, has been for the last several years, and it's early days. Number two would be the regulations that have been implemented in a bit of a hurried way, and hopefully the Fintech revolution takes us through that in a more light form. More importantly, the first Fintech revolution, I would argue, was the mainframe computing age, which really drove back-end processing and payments in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. The PC and internet age came about really to drive better distribution of information. And also the idea of just access to product. Fintech Revolution 3 is really about the cloud and AI and mobility. We had led the first two revolutions in the institutional capital markets. This revolution, we are behind the consumer space and the retail space, and now the industry seems to be trying to move forward to get to a much more modern way of working that we actually experience in our private lives.
So what can retail investors expect with this next phase?
Well, the retail investors are certainly moving into a more cohesive personal approach and touch when they get provided services by their broker-dealers. And even ideas like virtual reality and artificial intelligence, robo-advisors today are considered a very low-end, low-touch model. As the technology improves, you'll start to see users prefer that way of interacting and by exception want to work with a person. And then when the new generations come on and inherit the wealth, whether it's the Gen X or the millennials or even the generations behind them, the iGen and the Gen Z, they are certainly going to prefer that. So robo-advisors will be more the rule than the exception, and it will be the preferred way of interacting with your client. And
what can institutional investors expect with Fintech?
Well, on the institutional side, I think we have been used to more pushing what we do down into that world. In this cycle, we're likely to actually take what's going on in retail and consumer, whether it's visualization, mobility, leveraging the cloud, et cetera, and artificial intelligence. We're likely to take that up to us. But more importantly, the institutional markets, the workflow is much more important because it's a global market across different asset classes with many different people doing different functions. And stitching that together in a more cohesive way with multiple providers inside and outside of your institution, it really is about workflow. And there's initiatives around collaboration technology, which will allow people, data, and applications to work more seamlessly, and it will allow all of that to hang together and ultimately allow people to go home earlier or just move on to higher order tasks.
I mean, how big will blockchain be with all this?
So blockchain will be very big. It already is a big concept. It's early days, but it is big. Crypto might be big as either a store of value or an exchange mechanism for currency. The technology itself will be very big. It will essentially make the internet safe for commerce by making it more efficient to run data around in a blockchain form, but most importantly, protecting data so that it can be shared inside of an institution, but also shared between institutions that have to be very sensitive to the type of data that they traffic in. So locking down data in small bits in cryptography is a big part of the blockchain puzzle.
All right, well, thank you very much for joining us at MarketSite.
Thank you, Jill.
And thank you for joining me. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.